So now we have tackled the first thing to be aware of, that behavior is communication, meaning for unpleasant behaviors, how might they be manifestations of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? Then we've just gone through a slew of videos talking about triggers in every single category that we identified. So we had the biological category, which was subdivided in physical and emotion triggers. Then we had the psychological category, which was all about thinking triggers. And finally, we talked about the social category, which was subdivided in self and other triggers. So now we're moving on to the last thing we need to be aware of. What are the signs that our bodies are sending us that our nervous systems are dysregulated, that we need to take some kind of action because our bodies are in fact communicating with us? So let's, before we do that, go back to the phone analogy. So with our phone, we have a visual battery. We are able to see just where our battery level is and how much charge we have left and so on. And then not only do we have this visual battery, this battery also changes color when we get down to a certain percentage. And then if you're like me, I get notifications when I'm at 10%, 20%, sorry, 20, 10, 5, and then 1%. So how do our bodies tell us? How do we know when we are running low on battery power? How do we know what our body is communicating to us about our energy levels and when our nervous system is dysregulated? So before I go through this list of signs, I would like to reinforce the fact that I am not a medical doctor. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a nutritionist, osteopath, nurse practitioner, any of those things and more. I am not those people. I also encourage you that if you are experiencing any of the things that I am about to discuss in these lists, to go have them checked out by a medical or a licensed healthcare professional, because it is important to understand if there is something serious underlying these things. We don't just want to chalk it up and say, oh, well, my nervous system is dysregulated. I'm going to take the action as some of the action items. I'm going to create my own plan and do some of these things. We need to check things out. You are responsible for your own health. And I encourage you to please take action. Go see someone if you're experiencing one or more of these things to rule out anything more serious going on that you should attend to. So now that we've dealt with that, we're going to dive into how do we know that we are running low on energy? How do we know that our nervous system may be dysregulated? So first and foremost, we will see sleep issues, chronic fatigue, sleep irregularities. So what does that look like? It looks like it takes a very long time to fall asleep. You might not be able to stay asleep. Maybe you are waking up frequently in the middle of the night and unable to fall asleep quickly and so on, where you're waking up and you feel really tired, you feel like you didn't have a refreshing night of sleep. You might also be experiencing stomach and digestive issues, bloating, acid reflux, ulcers, uh, many other IBS, so on. All of these, tons of my clients tell me about their stomach and digestive issues. I even had really bad acid reflux to the point where I was on meds. And so, yes, I can identify that I too had stomach and digestive issues. I was dealing with it through meds. And then as I was noticing that I was getting better, as I was getting deeper in my self-regulation practice, I spoke with my doctor and we discussed whether or not I'd wean off meds and so on. So again, I was working in tandem with my general practitioner. Muscle tension, chronic pain, and stiffness. This is a very popular one. I know a lot of people, and several of my clients. One I could think of, an ex-client in particular, who had severe pain in their muscles and in their back in particular. And they would tell me that they don't even remember ever not experiencing this pain. And so this is a sign that something is going on. Skin issues, um, eczema, um, systemic acne, skin issues that have to deal with inflammation, very severe. This is a sign. Headaches, migraines in particular. The more I experienced dysregulation, the more I noticed I had migraines. And then once I started figuring things out, my migraines started receding again. And just another note about skin issues. So I've had eczema for as long as I remember. And one of the doctors I had when I was younger said that I have asthmatic eczema. And one of the things that I noticed was times, periods of extreme stress. So I think one of the worst times, at one point, my mom had what we thought was a brain tumor. It turned out to be benign. But leading up to her surgery, I remember the eczema was spreading like wildfire all over my arm. And until she was cleared and things got better, the stress of the whole situation, my eczema got worse, and then it got better as the stress receded. And I didn't necessarily make that connection until several years later. So we just talked about headaches and migraines, frequent illness, having a weak immune system, an inability to relax or restlessness, shallow chest breathing. The more we're unable to breathe from our full lungs, and for some of you, that could mean belly breathing. Notice where you're breathing from. Are you breathing only from up here? Are you breathing from down here? Are you able to take long breaths and even longer exhales? Or are you breathing very shallow, very shallow? This could be a sign. Teeth grinding, wanting to withdraw. So this is not someone who has a small social battery. This is really someone who notices a difference in the amount that they want to be social from before. Executive function issues. So I've mentioned this a few times. For those of you who are unaware of what executive functions are, I'll give you a list of a few of them. So we have metacognition, focus, task initiation, memory, organization, planning, prioritization, goal-directed persistence. There are others. All of those are considered executive function executive functions. So if you have issues with many of those and they are impeding and getting in the way of your life. So there are many students, and as I mentioned, in that last stage of development between puberty and early adulthood, when your brain is developing, that's the part of the brain that is going through its final stage of development. So naturally, you're going to experience executive function issues. And they can also get to the point where they're really impacting your ability to be productive and to get through. So if it really becomes that big of a problem, then it's something that you might want to consider is one, again, make sure that there's nothing else underlying those executive function issues. And you also want to address your self-regulation, because once you address that, naturally they start coming back and it makes it easier. It doesn't mean they're perfect and that everything's going to be great, but it's not going to be as difficult to execute. Low energy, inertia, being very slow, having a hard time getting off the couch and doing things, that's a sign. Volatile emotions and unpleasant behaviors. When I consider, like, we're not talking about a one-off. We're all human beings. We all have our bad days and our good days. We're talking about consistently having volatile emotions and exhibiting unpleasant behaviors and automatic racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, all of these things um, could be signs of dysregulation and having not enough energy in your tank and your stress response cycle going on and on and on for too long without it finishing with the fourth step of parasympathetic activation where you are regenerating. And so when you are stuck, we are going to see this. We are going to see a more negative outlook on life. The saying, going through life with rose-colored glasses. Well, when we are stuck in that three-step cycle, we're going to start seeing the world more negatively. We're going to potentially misinterpret people when they're speaking to us. We might think that they're actually yelling at us, and so on. So we really want to take the time to look at this and to consult with a professional, make sure that nothing more serious is happening. And I keep repeating this because of just how important it is. So what questions do we want to ask ourselves? We want to first make a list of what signs our bodies are sending us regarding our tension and energy levels. So go through that list. It's in the workbook, take note, or on another sheet of paper if you can't access the workbook. But the workbook is always in the video description box below the video. And then we want to ask ourselves, when I am calm, I experience. Now, a note about being calm. One, calm is not the same thing as being quiet. So we might think that if we're sitting watching TV quietly, and we could be watching a violent movie quietly, that we are calm because we're quiet. And that's not the case, because it's what's happening to our nervous system that really determines whether we are calm or not. And most often when we are watching TV, when we are on our phones, on social media and so on, our nervous systems are actively being activated, and we are in well, our nervous system is always activated, it's just we're in sympathetic activation. So we're in step 3 versus actually calm. The other point that I want to make where this is concerned is if we have not been in calm or experienced calm for a significant period of time, it has been a long time since you can remember being calm. When you come back to that experience, I want to give you the heads up. It's not necessarily going to be a pleasant, euphoric experience. For many people, it is possible to become addicted to adrenaline. That's why you have the term adrenaline junkies, because feeling calm and experiencing calm is not necessarily, for some people, a pleasant experience. And so at the beginning, it might be uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's just once we get used to it and spend more and more time in it, do we then, one, start enjoying it and start realizing when we're not in it. So those were my two comments for calm. And then we also want to ask ourselves, when I'm not calm, I experience. So what's going on? What do you feel in your body and in your brain when you're not calm? So that brings us to the end of all of the awareness part of the two-part process. We are now going to start in the action part of the two-part process. So join me there.